بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So tonight, inshallah, we start with the 15th dars, الدرس الخامس عشر, 15th lesson from the book الدروس المهمة لعامة الأمة, important lessons for every Muslim by Sheikh bin Baz rahimahullah. And he's now going into the next chapter dealing with adab. How should the Muslim behave? The behavior and the character of the Muslim. How is the Muslim supposed to carry himself or herself in public or in private, with their family, co-workers, friends, and anybody that they deal with on a daily basis. So he titles this chapter التحلي بأخلاق المشروعة لكل مسلم. The characteristics that every Muslim should take on or adorn themselves with, or basically the behavior or the type of behavior pattern or characteristics that every Muslim should have. So قال رحمه الله الدرس الخامس عشر التحلي بأخلاق المشروعة لكل مسلم. And he says ومنها الصدق. He says the first thing he mentions is to be truthful, that the Muslim is supposed to be a truthful person. But before that, the Sharih Sheikh Abdul Muhsin Hafidahullah, he starts off with the introduction showing the importance of adab and the importance of manners, Islamic manners, and the importance of having good character and displaying good mannerisms. So he says, about adab, about manners, he says, فَشَأْنُهَا عَظِيمٌ وَمَكَانُتُهُ عَلِيَّةٌ. That this issue of manners, morals, character, behavior is a serious issue, and it has a high status in Islam. He says, حتى إن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لما سئل عن أكثر ما يدخل به الناس الجنة قال تقوى الله وحسن الخلق. He said, to the extent that when the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, when he was asked the question, he was asked, what will be the thing, or what will be the thing that will enter most people into the paradise? How will most people enter the paradise? When the Prophet ﷺ was asked this question, he said, Taqwallah, qala taqwallah, that they have taqwa of Allah, they have fear of Allah. And taqwallah is carrying out the commandments of Allah and staying away from the prohibitions. Fi'l al-ta'at wa tark al-ma'asi, at-taqwa. We say fear Allah akhi, or fear Allah sister, but at-taqwa means to carry out the obligations that Allah and His Messenger have given us, and to stay away from the prohibitions at the same time, at-taqwa. So the Prophet ﷺ said, most people will enter in paradise based on two things in this hadith. In this hadith, which is in the Musnad of Imam Ahmed, and Imam al-Tirmidhi recorded, wa Ibn Majah an Abi Huraira radiyallahu anhu, and Shaykh al-Albani said, it is Hassan. Hassanahu al-Albani rahimahullah. The Prophet ﷺ said in this hadith, the two things that most people will enter the paradise based on is taqwallah, the fear of Allah, and the second thing he said, wa husnul khuluq, and having good adab, having good behavior, having good manners, morals, or whatever, how you want to translate it. And then he sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said in another hadith, وقال صلى الله عليه وسلم إن من أحبكم إلي وأقربكم مني مجلسا يوم القيامة أحاسنكم أخلاقا. He said, the most beloved of you to me, the ones who I love the most from amongst you, and those who will sit the closest to me Yawm al-Qiyamah, those who will sit the closest to me Yawm al-Qiyamah, are those of you who have the best adab, who have the best character, who have the best behavior, who have the best manners. This is another hadith, أخرجه الترمذي. And also, عن جابر بن عبد الله رضي الله عنهما. So in this hadith he says that the most beloved to the Prophet ﷺ is the one who has the best character, who carries himself or herself with the best manners. And he also said, the one who will sit closest to him, Yawm al-Qiyamah, who will be closest to the Prophet ﷺ, Yawm al-Qiyamah, are those who have the best character, who behave themselves accordingly, as Islam has taught us. He said in another hadith, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتِمَّمَ صَالِحَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. He said, indeed I have been sent, meaning Allah sent me to perfect and to show Salih al-Akhlaq, to perfect the noble character or the righteous character, to show us and teach us how the Muslim is supposed to behave. So all of these hadith show the importance of behavior in al-Islam on the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there's another hadith when he says sallallahu alaihi wasallam, اتق الله حيثما كنت وأتبع السيئة الحسنة تمحها وخالق الناس بخلق حسن. That he said, fear Allah wherever you are. He said, fear Allah, have taqwa of Allah wherever you are. And then he said, and follow a bad deed when you commit a sin or a bad deed. Follow the bad deed with a good deed, because the good deed will erase the bad deed. And then he said at the end of the hadith, وَخَالِقَ النَّاسِ بِخُلُقٍ حَسَنٍ, and deal with the people with good manners, with good adab. And there are many hadith that show the importance of manners and how the Muslim is supposed to behave and carry themselves. So it's a mistake if we think that because we say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, that khalas, that we don't have to do anything after that we don't have to do any type of actions, that we don't have to carry ourselves in a certain way, that we don't have to speak a certain way, that we don't have to dress a certain way, that Islam has covered all corners, and from those things that we're supposed to be doing is behaving ourselves in the appropriate manner. And the dress of the Muslim is not restricted to a certain country. That's not my intent to say that you have to dress a certain way according to what may be popular in a certain country. But some things are not appropriate for a Muslim man to dress himself with. Some things are not appropriate for a Muslim woman to dress herself with, as is popular now. Tight jeans, skinny jeans. It's not appropriate for a Muslim man that can barely, we have to pray throughout the day. So sometimes the pants are tight like they are. Sometimes the odor is exposed in the salat. Somebody's back area is showing in the salat. And it's obligatory during the salat for the odor to be covered. You can't pray if some of that area is uncovered. So some things are not appropriate. Some things are not appropriate for the sisters. The point of the hijab, the overgarment, the jilbab, is to cover the woman. So it shouldn't be tight so that everybody can see the curves of our women. So the Prophet ﷺ, he showed us that adab is from the religion. And at the end of Aqidat al-Wasatiyah by Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he brings a whole chapter. It's a book of Aqidah, the belief system, how to believe in Allah, and the descriptions of Allah and the attributes of Allah. But at the end of the book, he brings a chapter about adab, the behavior, showing that it's part of the belief system, that we have to understand that behavior is a part of our religion. طيب, there are many athar, and there are a few here to show how the Muslims of the past held adab, behavior, and how serious they were about behavior. As is famously known, it's known in the books of Tariq, the history books, that the Muslims, when they went to the different countries to do tijara, to do business, they didn't go there giving a khutbah, giving durus and giving classes. They went to do business. They went to do business. But when they did business, those people that they did business with, a lot of them accepted Islam based on not a khutbah, not a talk, not a muhadara, based on their behavior, how they carried themselves. So those people would ask, why? What is called? Why do you behave like that? Why are you doing that? They would tell them, Islam teaches us to do that. And this is the effect that the Muslim is supposed to have on the non-Muslim. The non-Muslim is supposed to look at the Muslim and have some type of respect out of the way that, just based on not even knowing the belief, as this is what happened when they would go to the other countries. They didn't know what they believed, but they know from the way that they were carrying themselves that something's different about you all. And we should affect those, the non-Muslims should be affected by the presence, the mere presence of a Muslim, male or female. If we're carrying ourselves according to the Islamic standard, then they should be affected. So, Abdullah ibn Mubarak, rahimahullah, he died 181 years Hijri, which is over 1,200 years ago. Over 1,000 years ago. 181 Hijri. Right now is 1,438. 1438 Hijri right now. He died in 181. Famous Imam of the past. And it's a famous statement just to show the importance, the level that they held, because they understood these ahadith. They were ulama, they were scholars. They weren't like people who just memorize for the sake of memorizing, just to shoot people down in the street with the hadith. They understood the hadith and they tried to the best of their abilities to implement the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So Abdullah ibn Mubarak, he said, طلبت الأدب 30 سنة وطلبت العلم 20 سنة وكانوا يطلبون الأدب قبل العلم. He said, and this is how serious they were. He said, I studied adab, behavior, manners, characteristics, or how to behave for 30 years. 30 years studying adab, this chapter. He said, وَطَلَبْتُ الْعِلْمِ 20 سَنَةً. He said, and all the other things, hadith, fiqh, tafsir, Arabic, all those other sciences, he said, and I studied those 20 years. 30 years studying this chapter that now we treat it like, I'm not a student, so I don't have to behave like that. I'm not a scholar, so I don't have to do that. I'm not this, I'm not that. And as some of the non-Muslims say, some of our mouths are worse than, some of us sound like we still in the corner. We sound like rappers. And those people that Allah doesn't praise, we have characteristics, we carry ourselves with characteristics that are not praiseworthy by the standards of Islam. Even though they might be praiseworthy in our society or where we come from, Islam doesn't teach us that, and it's not praiseworthy Islamically. Ibn Mubarak, rahimahullah, he said he studied adab for 30 years. 30 years. And he studied ilm, hadith, and all the other sciences for 20 years. And he said, وَكَانُوا يَطْلُبُونَ الْأَدَبْ قَبْلَ الْعِلْمِ. He said the people during that time, they used to study adab, how to carry themselves, how to behave before they would study the other sciences. Before they would study the other sciences. And قال Sufyan al-Thawri, Sufyan al-Thawri, rahimahullah, another famous imam of the past, and he died before Abdullah ibn Mubarak. He died in 161 Hijri. This is old. This is an old mentality. But these people were closer to the time of the Prophet ﷺ. They were closer to the time of the Sahaba, and they were closer to the time of the Tabi'een, they were closer to the time of Imam Ahmed, they were closer to that time. Sufyan said, rahimahullah, كانوا لا يخرجون أبناءهم لطلب العلم حتى يتأدبوا ويتعبدوا 20 سنة. He said that the people during that time, they wouldn't send their kids out to learn the different sciences until they learn how to behave first. Until they learn how to behave first, and until they began to worship. They began to worship, and he said they would do that with their children for 20 years. 20 years learning how to behave. This shows the importance and the emphasis that was put on adab. And those are the first things, from the first things mentioned in the books of knowledge, seeking knowledge for the student, the person wants to learn. They always mention adab talib al-ilm. How is the student supposed to behave in the class? How is he supposed to behave when he's sitting in the class? How is he supposed to dress? How should he address the teacher? How shouldn't he address the teacher? How should he come to class? What should he do as far as reviewing the lesson and all that kind of stuff? They always mention before they get into the actual, the crux of the lesson, adab, the adab, how to carry yourself first. And there's another famous athar on about Imam Ahmed rahimahullah, that during the time of Imam Ahmed rahimahullah, 5,000 people will come to his class. 5,000. 5,000 people will show up to the class of Imam Ahmed. They said out of that 5,000, 500 will write down, benefit from the actual lesson. Only 500 will benefit from the actual lesson. They said the other 4,500 came there to benefit from his adab, just to benefit from his manners and how he carried himself. Because if a person has knowledge, you should see it, it should reflect in their behavior. So, Islam encourages this type of attention and high status to behavior. And for this reason, it says, وَاللَّهُ تَبَارَكَ وَتَعَالَى نَعْتَ نَبِيَّهُ فِي الْقُرْآنِ الْكَرِيمِ بِكَمَالِ الْخُلُقِ وَعِدَمِهِ وَحُسْنِهِ. That Allah even described the Prophet ﷺ in the Quran. He described him in the Quran, and he spoke about his adab in the Quran. And this is in Surah Al-Qalam. قال تعالى وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. In Surah Al-Qalam, the 4th ayat, Allah says, and indeed you are on a great standard of character. Indeed you are on a great standard of character, meaning the Prophet ﷺ. So he was the best. He was the most complete when it came to his manners and how he dealt with people and how he behaved, Muslim, non-Muslim, with his wives, with his children, with his family. He was the best example. And then the tafsir of this ayat, a man came and he asked Aisha radiallahu anha, as the wives of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, they were more privy to some things that the Sahaba were not, because they lived with him. His wives, they lived in the house with him, so she was with him, or they would be there and they would see things that the Sahaba couldn't see. Right? So they would come and they would ask Aisha questions. So a man came and he asked Aisha, and this is in Tafsir Ibn Kathir, عن قتادة. He says, سئلت عائشة عن خلق الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم. That a man came and he asked Aisha, how was the Prophet's behavior? How did he carry himself? How was his mannerism? How was he? As in the house, when they couldn't see him. فعائشة رضي الله عنها قالت, she asked the man a question. She said, ألست تقرأ القرآن? She asked the man, she said, don't you read the Quran? The man asked, how was the Prophet ﷺ? How was his adab in the house? She said, don't you read the Quran? Huh? The man said, قال بلى, of course I read the Quran. قالت, she said, فإن خلق الرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كان القرآن. His adab was the Quran. The way he behaved was according to the revelation, according to the legislation, what Allah revealed. He implemented the Quran. He implemented the Quran. And this shows the importance of following our Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So now he brings another ayah. He says, فَكَانَ sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, فَكَانَ قُدْوَةً لِلْعِبَادِ فِي كُلِّ خُلُقٍ كَرِيمٍ. So he is an example or role model for the worshippers or for the slaves in every aspect of good character or a mannerism that could be thought of. He already displayed and showed us how to behave. And now he brings the ayah which is in Surah Al-Ahzab. قال الله تعالى لقد كان لكم في رسول الله أسوة حسنة لمن كان يرجو الله واليوم الآخر وذكر الله كثيرا. Where Allah said in Surah Al-Ahzab in verse number 21, He said, and indeed in the messenger you have the best example for the one who desires to meet Allah on the day of judgment. The best example is in the example of the Prophet ﷺ. The role model for the Muslim is in the example of the Prophet ﷺ. And it says in the tafsir that this ayah here, where Allah said, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ, that you have in the Prophet ﷺ an example or a model for the one who desires the last day, who wants to meet Allah and get his reward, the one who wants the reward from Allah. His example is in following the Messenger ﷺ. Ibn Kathir said, rahimahullah, هذه الآية الكريمة أصل كبير في التأسي برسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في أقواله وأفعاله وأحواله. He said that this is a staple principle in the religion. This is a staple principle in the religion to show the following of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam should be displayed according to his statements, his actions, in every situation possible. That a person should look to the example of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and take his example from his statements and his actions. And then he says that this chapter is vast. The chapter of adab is not narrowed down to only how we deal with each other, but it also includes how do we deal a person's relationship with Allah Jalla wa Ala. Al-adab ma'Allah. That a person stays away from disobedience. That a person stays away from disobedience. This is from good adab. That a person implements the commandments of Allah Jalla wa Ala. And therefore, they say for the person who puts partners with Allah, because it's possible a person can put partners with Allah, but maybe they deal with the people. Their dealings with people are excellent, right? They're nice people, very respectful person, but they don't worship Allah, or they put partners with Allah when they worship, right? He said, for this type of person, he said that he has, he says, فَلِهَذَا فَإِنَّ كُلَّ مَنْ يَعْبُدُ غَيْرَ اللَّهِ خُلُقُهُ مِنْ أَفْسَدِ الْأَخْلَاقِ. He has the worst behavior or character. As adab is three types. The person's adab ma'Allah, how the person deals their relationship with Allah, their relationship with the Prophet ﷺ, and their relationship with the people. As a person might be good in their relationship with the people, but when it comes to their relationship with Allah, they might have terrible adab. Why? Because Allah gives us life, all the things that we love, gives us all the ni'mah, feeds us, provides for us, and then this person turns around and they don't give thanks to Allah. Or they turn around and they give thanks to other than Allah. They turn around and they worship other than Allah. So this is su adab. This is bad adab or bad manners that a person shows with Allah Jalla wa Ala. And he says the best adab. So it shows that a person has to fulfill all three. Meaning implement the oneness, worship Allah alone without any partners. Follow the Messenger ﷺ, sticking to his sunnah. And he also has to deal with the people respectfully, as Islam taught us. So it's not enough that we have the first two. We follow the Prophet ﷺ, we believe in Allah, we follow the Messenger. And we say, nah, they kuffar, so we just going to deal with them like this. We're going to, steal from them. So why you lie to him, Akhi? He ain't Muslim anyway. Islam doesn't teach that. nor is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And anybody who reads the seerah, the biography of the Prophet ﷺ, it's clear that that's not how the Prophet ﷺ treated the Jews during his time. They were Jews. Some of the Kuffar Quraysh that wanted to kill him, they wanted to kill him, and he knew it. And he still treated them with respect. He still treated them with respect. And this is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, that we treat people according to the Islamic standard. He says that the beneficial adab, khuluq al-nafi', is the one who alladhi yaqumu bihi sahibuhu yarju alayhi ma 'inda Allah liyafuza yawm al-qiyamah dukhulan lil-jannah. He said that adab that will benefit a person is that the person wants to gain Allah's reward yawm al-qiyamah. And that comes from all aspects. By worshiping Allah, our relationship with Allah, that they worship Allah upon Tawheed. They sing Allah out in worship, that they follow the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ as we've been commanded to do in the Quran and in the Sunnah, and that they treat the people according to the Islamic teachings, the Islamic standard. And then he brings the ayat where Allah says, إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا. As the people said, where Allah mentioned in Surah Al-Insan, that we feed you, they said, we feed you liwajhillah, seeking Allah's reward. We feed you, we give you food. Like the brothers feed the homeless here. They said, we feed you liwajhillah, that they do it for Allah's reward. La nuridu minkum jaza'an, that we don't want from you any type of reward or anything that you have to give back to us. Wala shukura. And then the tafsir says that they do these things seeking Allah's reward, and they don't want anything back. Not money. They don't ask for any money for what they do. And they don't ask for any praise, that people praise them for their action. And this is the type of thing that gains Allah's reward. Adab with Allah is that a person does it sincerely, seeking Allah's reward. So he says that the point of this chapter is that هنا إشارة إلى جملة من أخلاق الحسنة, that he points out some, not all, but he points out some of those manners that every Muslim should behave or adorn or take on in their daily lives. So he says, firstly, وَمِنْهَا الصِّدْقُ, to be truthful. That the Muslim is to be truthful. He said, and this is from the greatest Islamic etiquettes that shows the virtue that's so virtuous. قال تعالى, Allah says in the Quran in Surah At-Tawbah, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَكُونُوا مَعَ الصَّادِقِينَ. Allah said, oh, you who believe, and he mentioned two things: fear Allah, have taqwa of Allah, and be with the truthful people. Kunu ma'a sadiqeen. Be with those who are truthful. Which in itself is a lesson in itself, that the people we take as close friends, close companions, they should be people who are truthful. As a person is on the deen of his companion, as the Prophet ﷺ said, that when a person takes another person as a close friend, either person A, he rubs off on person B, and person B resembles him in behavior or her in behavior, or person B rubs off on person A and they resemble them. Somebody is going to affect the other person, male or female, whatever it is. Someone is going to be affected. Therefore, a person should take or be wise in who we take as close companions, so that we aid one another in goodness and righteousness, and that we don't aid one another in sin and transgression and ma'asiyah and disobedience to Allah. So in that ayat, Allah said, fear Allah, number one, and be with the truthful people. Be with those who are truthful. And that's Surah At-Tawbah, ayat 119. And then he brings another hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, عليكم بالصدق فإن الصدق يهدي إلى البر وإن البر يهدي إلى الجنة وما يزال الرجل يصدق ويتحرى الصدق حتى يكتب عند الله صديقا. And that hadith is in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, where the Prophet ﷺ said, عليكم بالصدق, it is upon you all to be truthful. It is upon you all to be truthful. This is a command from the Prophet ﷺ. It is upon you all to be truthful. And now he describes why. فَإِنَّ الصِّدْقَ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْبِرِّ. He said, because if a person is truthful, being truthful will lead a person to al-bir. And al-bir is usually translated as goodness. But it includes all those things, all things that are pleasing to Allah Jalla wa'ala. Truthfulness will lead a person to those actions and those statements that are pleasing to Allah Jalla wa'ala. And he says, and if a person is truthful, which will lead him to those things that are pleasing to Allah, then the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ الْبِرَّ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ. And that bir, those things that are pleasing to Allah, if a person does them, it will lead the person to paradise. It will lead a person to paradise. So he gives a chain reaction. It's a chain reaction. Be truthful, because truthful will lead you to those things that are pleasing to Allah. If you do those things that are pleasing to Allah, that will lead you to enter into paradise. And then he said, وَمَا يَزَالُ الرَّجُلُ يَصْدُقُ وَيَتَحَرَّى الصِّدْقَ حَتَّى يُكْتَبَ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ صِدِّيقًا. He said, the man or woman, they will not continue, they will not strive. They will, as long as they're striving to be truthful, to the point where they will be written down with Allah as being siddiqan, as being a truthful person, out of striving to be truthful. Allahu a'lam where the little white lie comes from. Allahu a'lam. But the Prophet ﷺ said, as long as a man or woman continues to strive to be truthful, then they will be written down with Allah siddiqan. And that word siddiqan shows that they had some, it's emphasized in the Arabic language, like Abu Bakr Siddiq, a very truthful person. طيب. So he says, وَأَعْظَمَ الصِّدْقِ شَأْنًا وَمَكَانَةً. He said, the highest form of being truthful is that a person is truthful with Allah Jalla wa'ala. That a person is truthful with Allah Jalla wa'ala. That a person is truthful in his relationship with Allah. فَيَكُونُ صَادِقًا مَعَ اللَّهِ فِي تَوْحِيدِهِ وَإِيمَانِهِ وَتَعَبُدِهِ وَتَقَرُّبِهِ إِلَى اللَّهِ جَلَّ وَعَلَى. So a person is truthful in his tawheed, when he singles out Allah out in his worship, that he's praying or he's doing that act of worship seeking Allah's reward only, not to be seen by the people, not to be praised by anybody, not to be pushed into a position, but that he's truthful, meaning that he does that action seeking Allah's reward, not seeking anything from the worldly life. If something comes from the worldly life, from Allah's ni'mah, then that's secondary. It's tabi'un. That's not the origin of the action. The origin of the action is that a person performed that action seeking Allah's reward. If they gain something from the dunya secondhand, then that is from Allah's ni'mah. طيب. And then he said, وقال صلى الله عليه وسلم وقال عليه الصلاة والسلام ما من أحد يشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمدا رسول الله صدقا من قلبه السلام ورحمة الله إلا حرمه الله على النار. حرمه الله على النار. He said, the Prophet ﷺ said in this hadith, which is in Sahih al-Bukhari, and Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu, he said, there is no one that bears witness that La ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammad Rasulullah, that none is worthy of worship except Allah, and that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the messenger of Allah, and that when they do this, that they're sidqan, they're truthful in their belief, in their statement, صِدْقًا مِنْ قَلْبِهِ, they're sincerely being truthful in their statement and their belief in their heart. He said, إِلَّا حَرَّمَهُ اللَّهُ عَلَى النَّارِ, that Allah makes the hellfire haram to touch that person. It becomes impermissible for the hellfire to touch the person who says that. صِدْقًا مِنْ قَلْبِهِ, the Prophet ﷺ said, truthfully. In his heart, he's truthful in his shahada, in his testimony, showing the seriousness of the shahada. That it's not just a statement that's said, but miftahul jannah. It's the key to paradise. And this is the greatest statement that a person could say. So the shahada can't be maqbula, can't be accepted except that it is truthful, as the Prophet ﷺ said, sidqan min qalbihi. The one who says it, they bear witness to this, and they're truthful in their heart that this person, Allah made the hellfire haram to touch that person. Tayyib, it says as-sidqu. What is as-sidqu? How do we know if a person is truthful? It says huwa muwata'atu qalb bil-lisan. That what's in a person's heart is it agrees with what is on his tongue, or what is on her tongue. بحيث يكون ما يقوله المرء بلسانه موافقا لقلبه. That what he says with his tongue is, it agrees with his heart. So what about the opposite? What if a person says something and they don't believe it in their heart? أما إذا اختلف الظاهر بالباطن والسر بالعلن فهذا هو النفاق. If the inside believes one thing and something else is apparent on the outside, then this is hypocrisy. That what? The outside or the tongue and the heart don't agree. The tongue is saying one thing, but the heart believes another thing. We're not able to look into people's hearts. The persons will meet Allah Yawm al-Qiyamah, and only Allah knows if the person was being sincere or not. But he says, قد يكون نفاق أكبر وقد يكون نفاقا أصغر. Nifaq, hypocrisy, is broken into two types. As it's difficult to call a person a hypocrite, you got to be careful, because hypocrites are not Muslims. A hypocrite, if it's nifaq akbar, the major hypocrisy is that a person doesn't believe in his heart in Allah Jalla wa Ala or in the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but they say it. We wouldn't know because it's inside of a person's heart. And we're not able to cut open people's chests and look in their heart. We judge people on what's apparent. But they come Yawm al-Qiyamah and Allah knows, just like during the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The hypocrites were known to the Prophet ﷺ. But hypocrisy is broken into two types. And according to this, which type it is, a person may still be a Muslim or they may not be a Muslim. In their affair, that will be judged by Allah Jalla wa Ala. So, فَإِذَا كَانَ يُظْهِرُ الْإِيمَانِ وَيُسِرُّ الْكُفْرِ بِالرَّحْمَنِ فَهَذَا النِّفَاقُ الْأَكْبَرُ. If a person, they show outwardly that they believe in Allah and His Messenger ﷺ, but in their heart they really don't believe, right? But you might look at them, we see them, right? You wouldn't be able to tell. That's nifaq al-akbar. That's major hypocrisy, where it's kufr, it's disbelief. They don't believe. Now it's possible you could look at them and you might not be able to tell. We can't tell. But Yawm al-Qiyamah, they'll be held accountable Yawm al-Qiyamah. As they didn't believe in Allah Jalla wa Ala. As nothing is hidden from Allah Jalla wa Ala. They might be able to hide from the people, but Yawm al-Qiyamah, when we come, we got to stand before Allah. That person will be held accountable. And that is called nifaq i'tiqadi. It's a belief. That portion of hypocrisy, that type of hypocrisy, is a hypocrisy in the belief system. They show, or they come out and say that they believe one thing, but in their heart they really don't believe it. It's a belief. The nifaq asghar, the smaller or the minor type of nifaq, is إذا كان يظهر الصدق أو يظهر الوفاء وهو يبطن الكذب. A person is lying, right? He's saying something, but they're really lying. When they tell you, generally when a person lies to a person in the beginning, unless they're a habitual liar, you don't believe anything they say anyway. But generally, you believe the person in the beginning until it's exposed that it was a lie, right? So when they come and they tell a lie, they're bringing out as if they're being truthful, when really internally they're lying and they know they're lying. Tayyib. This falls under nifaq, hypocrisy. But this is not the nifaq, i'tiqad. It's not a belief, it's an action. So ulama call this nifaq al-amali. It's an action that they've done. That action doesn't remove them from being a Muslim. That doesn't remove them from being a Muslim. But the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ spoke about that in the hadith, where he said, alayhi salatu wasalam, ayatul munafiq thalathun. There are three signs for a hypocrite. And all of these actions here, or the three things that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in this hadith, are all actions. They're not beliefs. Nifaq amali. He said there are three signs to know that a person is a hypocrite. You got to be careful with hypocrite. Not that they're not Muslim, but it's nifaq is nifaq amali. Either way, it's not something praiseworthy. It's negative, and it's dispraised in Islam. He said the first thing, إِذَا حَدَّثَ كَذَبَ. When he speaks, he lies. When they speak, they lie. He said, وَإِذَا وَعَدَ أَخْلَفَ. And if he makes a promise to a person, or she makes a promise to a person, that they go back on their promise. They say, I promise I'll do this, and then when it comes time to fulfill the promise or fulfill the trust, they go back on it. They don't fulfill their promise. He said, thirdly, وَإِذَا تُمِنَ خَانَ. And if they're entrusted with something, they betray the trust. They might be entrusted with a secret. They might be entrusted to hold something valuable. Whatever it is, they betray the trust. The Prophet ﷺ said, Ayatul munafiq thalatha. These are three signs that a person is a munafiq, a hypocrite. And as the ulama explained, that hypocrisy is broken into categories. Qismain. Nifaq i'tiqadi, the belief that Allah said in the Quran, that those munafiq, those hypocrites, belief-wise will be in the lowest part of the hellfire. Those who show apparently that they believe in Allah and His Messenger, but in the inside they really don't. They disbelieve in Allah and His Messenger. And then the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in this hadith actions that know that a person is a hypocrite in his actions or her actions. Not that they're not Muslim, but those actions are the signs that a person has fell into or committed the minor form of hypocrisy. He says, وَإِذَا كَانَ الْكَذِبُ. If lying is from a sign of hypocrisy, فَإِنَّ الصِّدْقَ مِنْ آيَاتِ الْإِيمَانِ وَعَلَامَتِهِ. Then the opposite is the same. If lying is a form of hypocrisy, then being truthful is a sign. If lying is a sign of hypocrisy, then being truthful is a sign of a person's iman, of a person's belief in Allah Jalla wa Ala. Then being truthful is a form or sign of a person's belief in Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. So lastly, Shaykh Abdul Zaki says, فَالْوَاجِبُ عَلَى الْمُسْلِمِ أَنْ يَكُونَ صَادِقًا. So it's obligatory. It's obligatory upon the Muslim to be a truthful person. وَأَنْ يَكُونَ الصِّدْقُ صِفَتَهُ وَزِينَتَهُ وَحِلْيَتَهُ. And that the people should know him and describe him as being truthful. Right? And it's not restricted. It's not restricted to when you're dealing with Muslims only, when you're in the masjid. It's not restricted to Yom al-Jum'ah, being truthful on Yom al-Jum'ah. It's not restricted to being truthful in Ramadan. It's not restricted to being truthful in the last 10 nights. Right? It's not restricted to being truthful just with people close to you, but brothers and sisters you don't really know, you know. You lie to them or get over on them. as those books of tariq, those biographies are Islamic history. They're Islamic history books. And the history books is known that the people that the merchants did business with, they were impressed by the people, just the way they carried themselves. And many people, like in the country Indonesia, all of those Muslims know that those areas, the people accepted Islam based on, it wasn't like Dawah came with classes and durus and khutbah, that business was being done in a lot of countries. And many people accepted Islam based on the way that the Muslims were carrying themselves. So he says that it's upon the Muslims, obligatory upon the Muslim to be truthful, and that the people should know him to be a truthful, or her to be a truthful person. We shouldn't be known to be liars or habitual liars, or you got to really double check behind him. He fabricates the truth, right? We should be known to be people that follow the qudwa, the role model, our role model, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as Allah praised him in the Quran and in the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
I just wanted to recap before, because you cover so much material real fast, and I'm not writing it down. But you did say that, you made reference to Surah 9, Ayat 119.
There you go, Tawbah.
With regards to Adab, or was that...
that was being truthful.
Being truthful.
Yes.
Okay. So, if I remember from my past, relationship to what you were saying, is Aswatun Hasana.
Uswa, Uswa Hasana.
To lead by example, right? If you're following the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. So, am I associating the word tazkiyah with characteristics?
Tazkiyah?
Tazkiyah.
What do you mean by tazkiyah, though?
Tazkiyah is that in relationship to characteristics? Does that mean characteristics?
No.
No. Okay. Could you explain that for me?
Tazkiyah? There's a couple different meanings. One meaning is the purification of a person's heart. A person is basically cleaning themselves up. They're trying to stop sinning, they're trying to stop this, they're trying to be a better person. They're trying to be a better Muslim. Tazkiyah to nafs, to better yourself. Or tazkiyah can be that, like a reference. Like a brother wants to get married, or a sister wants to get married. So if a brother wants to marry if somebody wants to marry a person's daughter, well, we got to find out who the brother is. So we go and we ask people who can testify, basically. Yeah, who can testify? You know him? Is he a good guy? That's another type of tazkiyah.
That's how I was kind of associated with, with regards to character.
Right.
To someone's character.
Okay, all right. You wouldn't use that word, but that's the idea.
Okay.
People should be able to vouch for the Muslim as being a truthful person.
Okay. And lastly, I think I remember reading, obey those in authority even if they have the heads of raisins.
Hey.
Right? So, and in that regard, you would also have to, exercise some out there. Right?
Somewhat?
Restraint, patience. You know what I mean? Those qualities about the Muslim has to be initiated in order to navigate through this society, which would all be conclusive and adequate.
It's no time that the Muslim has the okay to behave like a fool, or just to disrespect people. Or,
I hear so.
You with me?
Yes.
Even though sometimes people try to make it right, or that's just where I come from, but that don't make it right. Islam taught us something, and that's what we live by, the revelation, the Quran and the Sunnah.
No, I hear all too often, people using the word kafir like a sword, like the tongue is like a sword. Kafir. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that, and I'll be honest, I kind of steer clear of those types of people when they use that word. With hatred.
I mean, either way, the word is it tayyib, but you don't how do you call somebody to something you be the truth if really you're going to disrespect them in their face? Nobody's going to accept that.
No, right.
Nobody's going to accept a person saying that I really want good for you, and then, you know, call them out of their name, disrespect them in their face, and say I really want good for you, and then, you know, just totally disrespect them. That's not even ma'qul. That's not even intellect. The intellect won't even accept that.
Right.
So, yeah, people, they're disbelievers, they're believers, and they're disbelievers. But tell you, it's the way that you deal with everybody. Everybody has the right to be dealt with in a certain way, according to the Islamic standard. And Islam taught us how to deal with everybody. And again, Islam taught us when to do this, when not to do this. Who can you do that, who you can't do. Everything has been laid out. If a person does something out of his position, that's out of their ignorance. That doesn't affect the justice that Islam brings. That's the ignorance of the person. They didn't learn. Their ignorance is not, you can't blame the religion for a person's ignorance of not knowing how to carry themselves. They're at fault. And that's their, we could say, deficiency for not finding out if they have the ability to find out. As there's something called al-udhru bil-jahl. There's a thing called a person is excused due to ignorance. Some people are excused due to ignorance, but everybody doesn't get an excuse due to ignorance. You don't get everybody. That's not for everybody. Oh, I was ignorant. I didn't know how. Like, that has to be specified. You had the ability to learn. It's not like a person out in the middle of nowhere where they have no connections to anybody. They didn't know anything. You live amongst Muslims, like in this city, so the population is large. Bookstores all over the place. Tapes in circulation, CDs in circulations, download on the internet. It's all over you. It's the excuse for some things a person might not get before Allah Yawm al-Qiyamah. All right? Not like a person maybe out in, I don't know, Arizona somewhere, one of those small towns where they might not have as much access. They might be more closer before Allah, getting that excuse of I ain't know. Right? Based on the lack of information available to them. But a person, as the thing they use in Saudi, a person says, for example, they don't pray. Right? In Saudi, they don't pray. A person says he don't pray. Why you don't pray? So they're not going to just, if a person doesn't pray, the issue of somebody not praying is not a Muslim, and all that's detailed. It's a process, a court process to all of that. So first they're going to question, why you don't pray? Why are you not praying? A person says, oh, I didn't know it was obligatory to pray. Born and raised in somewhere like Saudi Arabia, you didn't know it was obligatory to pray? Huh? Something like that is not acceptable, you know what I'm saying, as far as the excuse of being ignorant. Right? In that type of situation. But another country where Islam is not as prevalent and the information is not as available, another person might get that. Right? And a lot of times, sometimes the teachers, they will use America. Some parts of America, Islam hasn't reached like that. Some parts, it has. So if a person is in that area where it has, he might not get the same, or she might not get the same excuse as the person in another area. The excuse of being ignorant. So if a person is ignorant of how to do something, it's upon all of us to try to learn. Allah. We'll stop there, inshallah, and start next week with the second one. I think he mentioned about 10. The second one is al-amana, that a person, the Muslim, is supposed to be trustworthy. People should be able to trust us. Allah musta'an. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.